CCU Orlando and Akins Counseling Center present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 46, The Spirituality of Bees. And now, your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson, and very special guest, Jacqueline Freeman.
Hello, friends, and happy Monday. We love to be able to be some of the first people to say happy Monday to you. My name is Cynthia Alice, and I am the host here in 818 Studios with my very busy producer.
It has been really busy. My name is Dave Croft. Hello, everybody. I hope that you are having a fantastic Monday, and you are ready for an incredible week that the universe, I know, is going to give you.
Oh, yes, because we are very active with the universe and creating a life, not only that works for us, but that works for everyone. And, of course, I called Dave our busy producer because he's busy as a bee.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, it was cheesy. I couldn't help it. We have a very special guest with us. I've been so excited to have her on. Her name is Jacqueline Freeman, and she is the author of the book, Song of Increase. And so, Jacqueline, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, and tell everybody where you're coming to us from, because because it's a podcast, people don't realize that we're not in the same room because you don't live here in Florida. You're way out west.
No, I'm 3,000 miles away at least. I live in the southwest corner of Washington State. We're on my biodynamic farm.
Yes.
And it's a lovely gray day, as we're known for in the Pacific Northwest.
Imagine, which is how it is 9 to 10 months out of the year. I saw this thing years ago. You know you're from the Northwest if you've heard the term sun breaks, and you know what that means.
We all run outside.
Yes. I lived in Seattle many years, for 12 years, and love the Northwest. So we're sending blessings to you and your very cool biodynamic farm there. And if you don't mind, I want to get right into the book because there's so much, and we only have you for a show. And first of all, I don't think I said the title of the show. And what country are we shouting out to today? I forgot to say what country.
I will get that information to you. I wanted to give so much time to Jacqueline that I didn't prep a country.
All right. Well, we're really excited.
We'll jump back on countries next week.
And Jacqueline, I want you to know that we're so excited because the show really started as a dream of ours. And as it's manifested in ways really we hadn't imagined, and we're at now up to 22. The last time we checked, it was 22 countries. Well over, we're like 14,000 downloads, and
impressive.
So it's wonderful to me that your material is going to get to that many people, and this excites me. So the book Song of Increase. Now I don't even know exactly when it came out, but I had to give the show a title, and I didn't want to steal your title because it's your book, but so we're studying it at our church. First of all, I want to say that we're studying the book at our church, and we're doing a 4-week series, and what I pulled from the book was just the enormous spiritual lessons that can be gleaned from your writing and from the bees themselves. So we called the series, and we're calling the show today, show 46, The Spirituality of Bees. So, yeah. And so tell us a little bit about when you wrote the book.
Well, who would have ever guessed that was what was going to be the topic? Because I simply started with some bees.
Yeah.
We moved on to our, excuse me a second.
Mm-hmm.
We moved on to our organic farm 18 years ago.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And the first year we were here, we actually did not intend to become farmers. It's an old 100-year-old farm. We're the second owners. And we just wanted a nice place in the country. My husband and I are originally from New England.
Oh, yeah.
Where we lived in small towns. Mm-hmm. So we were simply looking to be in a small town again. The farm itself sort of engaged us in becoming farmers. So the first year that I was here, my girlfriend down the street came up and said, you have a farm here, but you don't have any chickens. I said, gee, gosh, no, I don't. I've never had chickens. And she said, you should have some. And she raises chickens. And I said, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And so she said, great, I have some in my back seat.
Oh.
So she gave us about
Chickens.
Just happened to have about 16 chickens in my back seat. So we got chickens. And the same thing happened with the bees.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who lives in Portland, which is only a half hour away,
right?
Portland, Oregon.
Oh, right.
She called up and said, I have some bees from a neighbor. They just bought a house. It had bees in the backyard. They don't want the bees. You have a farm. You should have bees. And I said again, yes. Just like I was listening to your interview the other day. And, when you say yes to the world says multiple yes back to you.
Absolutely.
So I took on these bees and I was instantly fascinated by them. Like from day one, I was a little scared of them too, because I didn't know anything about them and I didn't want them to sting me. Yeah. But I quickly came to realize that bees are not, by nature, they're not aggressive. By nature, they're quite nice, friendly. And so from the very beginning, I spent a lot of time with the bees.
Yeah.
The other thing that was going on is that back then, 18 years ago, there really wasn't a lot of communication about how to raise bees in an organic manner. Right. And we were starting to be an organic farm. So it was very hard to find out information on that. So I turned to the bees and I said, I know nothing, but I know that I want to treat you correctly. I want to do right by you. So, and this is my internal conversation with the bees.
Yes,
and I said, just, show me what I need to know. And I spent hours and hours. Now I call it the first 1,000 hours because they are fascinating little beings. And after the first 1,000 hours, you probably know a little bit about bees.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Well, the thing that was so inspiring to me about the book, and I'm reflecting on it now as you're speaking, that there was a really strong, it seems to be, a very strong trust of your intuition in listening to the inner voice, but also really trusting that the universe itself and that a message was there for you. And I think so many of us get caught with having this inner voice, even knowing to follow it, and not spending enough time in the quiet, listening to what that voice might be telling us. And then if we don't spend enough time, then we don't follow through and take, what I like to call just spiritually motivated action, that we really know it's ours to do. And oftentimes it might not look very logical, but in fact, the universe, our souls, as we are all working together, there's this divine intelligence that takes over that's so much smarter than the mind, And so as I read your book, I kept, picking that theme up over and over and over. And then as there's sections in each chapter about in our own words, I love all your writing, but when I get to the in your own words, I found the energy that came through to be such a pure consciousness from the bees. It is, it's an illuminating consciousness.
And it was full of information that I did not, as a person, know prior to the moment that I received that.
Yes.
When I was starting to develop that relationship with them, the first 6 years that I had bees, I really didn't know what to do. Sometimes I made mistakes. Sometimes the bees suffered from my mistakes. Sometimes I made a good guess. But I was really intent. I would go to them near every day. I would go to them and I would say, I don't exactly know what to do. Yeah. But I really want to do the right thing. And and in just the way you talk in your mind with a bee, I was saying, you have to help me on this. I'm here. I'm open. I'm wide open to it, but you have to help me. And I would just have this conversation. And of course, I'm thinking the conversation really isn't going anywhere. It's just me talking. But I realized at about the 6-year mark, one morning I woke up, and right at the moment that I was waking up, I'm half in sleep and still half awake. I just got a piece of information about the bees that I had never known before. I'd never read it anywhere. I'd never heard it from someone, but it had this, as my husband says, the ring of truth to it. Something deeply spiritual about the nature of the bees. And I realized that isn't that what prayer is? We put ourselves in service. We make a commitment to showing up every day. And I was asking for help. I was saying, I would love to know how to do well by you. But I didn't have an expectation that I was ever going to get an answer. And I honestly believe that's why I did get an answer, because I was in a prayerful situation
Yes.
and it came through. I
Yes.
think I got myself out of the way enough. And I
Yes.
was never upset when it didn't come through,
Yeah.
because frankly, I didn't have the expectation that there was something solid for me waiting there. When
Y-
it did open up, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
was just opening my heart like crazy.
Yes, and that's exactly what we teach about prayer. That prayer is not convincing God of anything because we don't believe God's up on the sky sitting on a cloud. We believe God is the very nature of the universe, including nature itself. And so as we think thoughts from the highest perspective, we believe that aligns us. With the ability to receive,
Yeah.
as you did. So you perfectly described how what we teach about prayer. It's not convincing God of anything. It's preparing our own consciousness really to receive the good of the universe. And I think in this case, with you, it was the be consciousness. It's like you have a special connection with the be consciousness, and
Mhm.
it is touching to read it on every level. And before I get too far into the book, I wanted to remark too and ask you if you had been a student of Rudolf Steiner for many years. I noticed the quotes of Steiner, throughout the book, and wanted to ask you about that.
No, I actually didn't. I started
Oh,
out wanting to have an organic farm.
yeah,
I didn't really know what biodynamics was, and
right.
certainly didn't know who Rudolf Steiner was.
Mm,
And in my reading, I came across some books, and my girlfriend, who lives about 3 hours away and
mm-hmm.
has a farm like ours, she and I just happened to be reading some things about Steiner at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, it's really funny. I'm reading about biodynamic agriculture, which has an embodiment of spirit within the
It
agriculture. It isn't
exactly
just
right.
you plant a tomato seed and there's the tomato. It's that this is the presence of the divine in everything that you do with
Yes.
it. And I see my farm as a living, breathing entity.
Mm-hmm.
And my task is to provide for that farm everything that would allow that farm to become its greatest expression of being.
Yes.
When I read about biodynamics, I was really intrigued because I had already had that feeling about my farm, that it's something. I call it my farm, but I know I'm just a temporary caretaker. But I had that feeling about it, that this is something, this land, this forest, the little water places we have, everything is special.
Yes.
And I like to try to treat the whole world like that too. That's a bigger task. So I start out by doing it in my home area, my little farm.
Yes. Well, and
Anyway,
go
I
ahead.
told my friend Patty, I said, this is funny because I'm reading about biodynamic agriculture, but I'm 9/10 of the way there. I didn't know some of the techniques of it, but I
Right.
certainly understood the principles, the spiritual principles that underlie it, that all of life has the breath of God within it.
Yes. Yes, beautifully said. And what you described doing with the bees and what you're doing with your farm, it's like you're saying this is what life is all about. Honoring the divine nature within all things and kind of helping move away blocks so that it can flourish and grow and mature,
Mm.
in consciousness. And I know I mentioned this, but I think it was before we started recording that at our church we're going to be studying the book, and we're very much applying some of the principles. And I'm kind of sneaking up on the congregation with this because they don't know the book's been in our bookstore, but only a few key leaders have read it so far, and the impact has been pretty instant in terms of people saying, oh my gosh, I understand my place in the church after I read the first chapter about unity consciousness. And oh, I think it's called Song of Unity, your first
Uh-huh.
chapter, but it moves into what unity consciousness is. And of course, we are a unity church. So it especially gets our attention when you're using the word unity. But we were talking about how as a spiritual community that our volunteers, our leaders, that we all have a special but unique part to play, and our job as the leaders is to really support and provide the right resources to support when they need support. And if somebody like you were talking in the book. Sorry, I'm saying so much about the book without saying it because it's in my mind.
Go, you're doing great.
Okay, about how each of the bees has their own specific job, and that if, let's say, a bee falls down or trips up, other bees don't stand around and say, "Why didn't you do it better?" And there's this immediately picking up the slack and supporting the other, and then getting right back in it. So I think there are so many lessons that are applicable to any community, and especially in a spiritual community. So that's what we're doing. We're doing a 4-week series. And I think I just picked the first 4 sections, even though, like I say, it's 4 weeks is not enough. We could study it 4 months. This book, I have actually said about your book that, and I've studied spirituality for many years. I've worked in churches 30 years. I've had a wide variety of spiritual experiences. This is the most spiritual book I've ever read, and that's saying something. That's saying something. And I don't say it lightly. I mean, it is chock full of spiritual principle that can be easily applied to everyday life to make your life, the community, and even the world, I believe, a better place. I love it.
Thank you so much. I'm sure the bees appreciate that. And even when I'm saying I don't think of that as my book, I really feel like I was just the
channel.
I was the channel passing through. And I don't even really think of it as the bees book. I mean, of course it is. And yet at the same time, I think of it as it's part of the greater consciousness of God.
It is. And their ability to speak in and through you, and your ability to receive it and then give it to us, is tremendous. It's funny because years ago, I can't remember when I first heard about quantum physics. Maybe it was 20 years ago. And so I've kind of dabbled here and there because of how it, in my view, it just so supports what we teach spiritually. But now science is proving what we know, to be true spiritually, or what I teach spiritually. And so there's this section, it's toward the end. I don't remember the page number, but it was one full paragraph about the quantum field. I think that paragraph is called Quantum Field, as a matter of fact. And when I pulled it out, here it is. It's on page, it's on page 156, 157, that whole area there. I did a whole workshop that was inspired by that one paragraph.
Lovely.
I called it the realm of all possibility because we talk about that a lot. We use those words a lot, and then it was about, and now this, and then just a few weeks ago I did a message called Quantum Physics in the Spiritual Journey. I want to just keep bringing that into the consciousness because of how important it is for us, I think, to really honor this new awareness of our connection. But the book really re-inspired that in me, and that was just one little thing that became an entire class. So I was real grateful for that that section, especially the part about how emotion is the fuel.
Yes.
Where the bee comes back and dances and shows the other bees where the new home is going to be and all of that, and that the dance brings joy, and that fuels the coming into the new place, and it also tells where the new their new home is going to be. I mean, that is exactly what manifestation requires. That all that joy, all that love, all that, and even the. I don't know if you said this, but the feeling I took away from it, and as I'm saying it right now, is the surety that manifestation is coming. Manifestation is here. That alone was worth the price of the book. That one paragraph.
It's rich, and I have to admit that prior to receiving that information, I knew about zero about the quantum physics
about quantum
theories. And I remember when I wrote that down, reading it going, what? Are you
Well,
kidding me? Like, and I had to
yeah.
go Google it to even read to help myself understand what those
Yeah.
passages were about. It was a very funny experience. I was saying, you think I'm smarter than I am.
Well, I remember the one part too in the book where you talked about the bees would tell you something, and then maybe a few months later, you'd be at a conference or something, and then the scientific evidence for what you'd been told came through to you, through a
Yes.
teacher. It's like, oh, that's what they were talking about.
It's funny because there's a few things in the book. It was published 3 years ago now,
Oh, wow.
19 in 2016, the end of the year, 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And when it was published, since then, there's a few things that were mentioned in there that are now proven by science to be true. At the time it was written, they weren't.
I believe
So
that.
that was really kind of approving.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was kind of nice to see that happen. I already knew it was true, but it was
Yes.
nice to see it proven by science.
Yes, it is. And yeah, I think we don't need science necessarily if we have the spiritual truth. But what I think is wonderful is it's a wonderful confirmation and affirmation, both of your connection and of the bees' intelligence, and their spiritual intelligence, and how it comes through you. Oh, and before I forget, for our show notes, I wonder if you remember the name of the book, the Rudolf Steiner book. I was just kind of, I thought before I do this interview, I'm gonna brush up on Steiner because it's been a while since I'd studied, and I was trying to remember the title of the book right now, but I wondered what book, if you remember, that you and your friend were reading at the same time. Do you remember that book?
I think it was a biodynamic farm written by Hugh Lovell. And
Okay.
I think he's from Australia or New Zealand.
Uh-huh.
I've forgotten
Uh-huh.
which, somewhere in another hemisphere.
Uh-huh.
And it was a beautiful book describing the whole process. And it was described. Steiner can be a little thick to read sometimes. He's
Yes.
dense.
Oh, isn't it the truth?
And
I
he's
mean,
he's a hard read. So having Hugh Lovell speak about it in terms of his own biodynamic farm and the growth of his own spiritual understanding was really quite nice. I do remember that book, and it's a good book.
yes. And isn't I guess Steiner didn't really start it, but popularized anthroposophy? Isn't that what it's called?
Yes.
Anthroposophy?
He absolutely brilliant man. He invented Waldorf schools and anthroposophic
Right.
spirituality.
Right.
This form of movement therapy called eurythmy.
Oh, I didn't know about
What
that.
else?
Uh-huh.
There's a Goethean architecture. He just in
Brilliant.
biodynamic agriculture
Mhm.
and on and on. There's so many things that he invented the concept of CSAs, community sponsored agriculture, although it's modified into something different now. In the time when he came up with it, it was meant to have everyone who was part of that farm, that very large farm,
Mhm.
all of the families contributed their love, their love and their energy to growing all the vegetables, so that they participated not only in the work task, but
Right.
they participated and understood the essence of the divine that's present in all of the
Yeah.
growth of our own food.
Yes, yes. Well, we are gonna go ahead and take a short break, and we'll be right back with Jacqueline Freeman, the author of Song of Increase. Thank you for joining us, friends.
We'll return to the program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, CCU Orlando, who has helped make this episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey possible. CCU Orlando is a welcoming community dedicated to transforming lives, celebrating diversity, and supporting soul growth. Christ Church Unity is located at 771 Holden Avenue in Orlando, Florida, with Sunday services at 9 and 11 a.m. You can stream services live online as well as learn more at christchurchunity.net. We'd also like to extend our thanks to our podcast partner, Akins Counseling Center. Cassandra Akins is a licensed mental health counselor dedicated to creating sacred space where clients can explore their own inner process in a safe, non-judgmental, and supportive environment. She works with individuals, couples, and groups who are seeking to live a more authentic life. Akins Counseling Center is located in Winter Park, Florida, and can be found on the web at CassandraAkins.com. And now we return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey.
We wake up to the understanding that we are all one all the time. Human beings exist connected each to each, but believe that they are not. Honeybees dwell in the full realization of that connection and have done so for eons. The unity we embody is a reflection of the kingdom-wide unity that dwells in us all. This is the gift we bring, complete sacred unity in body and spirit. To be in the presence of Spirit, of God, to simply sit and be in such presence offers the opportunity to be transformed by it. This we offer you. Come sit, be with us. Drink in the unity as you would fresh rain. We offer our gift with great joy and love. That was one of the first things that they told me.
Beautiful.
And I've had so many experiences with that. I know one of them, and I talk about in the book, is they have an interesting way of building the comb inside of their hives. They start at the top, and we give them just a bar. We don't give them a square to fill in. We just give them a bar in top like they do in nature, and they build the comb down. What's so interesting is when a colony first finds the hive that's going to become their new home, sometimes I can open it up and I can look inside, and you can lift up a bar, and what you'll see is a whole bunch of bees all laid across the whole length of the bar. And there'll be a few bees hanging on, and they're kind of holding on to the leg of the bee above it and the other leg of the bee above it. And then their legs are spread out, and there's a bee hanging on. And they're actually doing a system of measurement.
Wow.
They want to know how many combs, how many cells across by how many cells down will it take to build this comb. The thing that I find the most fascinating about it is that bee, who's the second bee from the left and fourth bee down, that bee is not the one who's going to build the comb. That's a measuring bee. Somehow that is transmitted across to the bees who come in one at a time, and each of them all come in with their little piece of wax, and they attach it there, and they affix it over here, and they do it here. And the whole thing just comes out. Do I have a piece of comb? Oh, I should have brought a piece of comb to show you what that looks like. Anyway, it's a piece of honeycomb.
Sure.
And they built this whole thing, and yet not a single one of them has the recipe that has the numbers of how the graph of how that happens. Each one of them holds a small bit of knowledge that then they all spontaneously understand. So if I were to put that in human terms, if I started building a wall on one side, and my husband started building a wall on the other side, and then we tried to make it come together in the middle, it'd probably kind of do something like that.
With like children as measuring tools. Lay down there, honey. No, okay, Billy. Now you there, and Kevin, you there.
And hold that leg.
Right, you stretch out. No.
I love that. And when we do this, when the bees do it, it just it comes together, and it just every little tiny cell, the other half of the side of the cell is built, and it perfectly merges in the middle. I mean, what an incredible experience of unity. Their consciousness all holds their small part of the task that they're doing, and yet it also holds the wholeness of the whole process. I find that astounding.
It is. Yes. It is astounding. I mean, the divine intelligence, it's the Fibonacci sequence, right? Right.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. The other really applicable part you talked about there, I'm thinking it's this chapter because you related it to relationships. And so much on the show, everything comes back to relationship because life is relationship. Right. And I often find, however we're feeling about our connection with God or, the universe, the divine, is how we show up in relationship. And one of the things you talked about, applying it to your marriage, and I thought that was brilliant. I've applied it to mine. And how you talked about rather than keeping score, and I think so many of us do that as humans. I've done the dishes 3 times. It's your turn to do them. And
I did that for the first 22 years.
Yeah.
So yes, indeed. and you can't help it. In the back of your mind, you have this, why did he not sweep the floor? Or why is laundry my responsibility? And I'm forgetting the part that he takes out the trash every week, which I hate to do. And always puts gas in my car, which I also don't like to do.
Yeah.
I keep track of what hasn't been done rather than what has been done.
Yeah.
And I got that lesson one time because I was doing some tinkering in the hive, which I probably shouldn't have been doing. And I remember watching, it was too hot. It was just too hot that day. And I thought if I went in early in the morning, who knows? I was making a mistake. That's really what I was doing. And I brushed against a comb and it fell off. It just fell off and crashed onto the floor. Honey went everywhere. The honeycomb broke and it just oozed all out. And every single bee in there, they were all in the midst of, here's the comb builders, here's the ones in the nursery taking care of this, here's the ones feeding water to anybody who's thirsty. They all have tasks. Hive is running beautifully. All of a sudden, I smush a big 2 cups of honey, just like I poured it in there, made a big mess. Honey was on bees, everything. Every bee turned around and just went, oh, and immediately got to work cleaning it up.
Yeah.
There was no strain. There was no emotional charge to it. It was just, this needs attending.
No blame.
This needs us to tend to it.
Right.
No guilt.
No guilt. No scorekeeping. And I was saying,
no shame.
Yep. No shame.
But do you think the bees all just kind of gave you a little side eye though? They're like, humans.
Oh, humans.
They certainly would have a right to. But I noticed, when that happened, I was watching these bees, some of them covered with sticky, and thinking, oh my God, it will take them a day to clean this up.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, why can I not be like that in my marriage? Why can I not just say, oh, the dog threw up, I'll pick it up?
Exactly.
Why do I go, whose turn is it to do the next messy task that no one wants to do?
Or you know what we do?
And
we get mad. It's like, it's your dog.
Right.
Yes. And I know when I started doing that, I would do dishes 6 times in a row. Mm-hmm. And I realized that it wasn't that my husband didn't do the dishes. It was that he was doing other things that make my marriage very happy.
Yeah.
And if I could continue on with this, and we talked about it and said, why don't we just approach that the same way the bees do? If it needs doing,
we do it.
Then just do it. Mm-hmm. How simple.
Simple.
What if we all did that in the world? What if there's a mess, let's clean it up.
Yeah. Not blaming who did it and then blaming the way and then
did it.
Saying how they did it wrong when they cleaned it up. And there was another section, Jacqueline, I wondered if you'd read for us. This is the other thing I wanted to tell you, that in terms of my personal enjoyment from the book, I don't know how you can see all these pages, but all the notes. Page 59, there is a section. The note I had above it was Beyond One into Oneness, and it's another section of In Our Own Words. It's at the bottom of page 59, and I wondered if you would read that for us and then comment in any way you might like to elucidate that passage for us.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This is what they say. We have a consciousness that extends beyond one and into oneness. When we hold our arms together in the open space, and this is describing that measurement that they do. When we hold our arms together in the open space, we are first building a template, spreading the measure of our bodies across the open space. It is as if we are standing upon the comb already built, as it exists in our perception. We see it there, and then we make it so. The comb is already in our consciousness, and so we bring it to the present, as we first beheld it when the scouts saw it constructed within the space we chose as home. The thought is expressed in love of one another. Upon the fabric of love it is written. I love that.
I do too.
When we hold this frame, we are moving between the work completed and the work as yet undone. These are simple steps, and our work becomes manifest. We bring forward what we imagine. Herein, we create a small part of the world, with each one of us knowing not more than the prescribed steps for one. But the one alone cannot bring even her part forward without the dreaming of the entire. In the consciousness of the unity, we build as one, both in space and time. We move freely between the space of imagining and the place of it is so. The unity moves between this natural fabric of time and matter. Manifestation can be done, as humans sometimes do, using emotion as fuel, but this can bring many entanglements that disrupt the clarity. We can also enliven our imaginations by acting as one and in unity, which is simpler, cleaner. Thus, the world we imagine becomes the world in which we live. May you all live as one and build your home around the heart of your nature.
Man,
That's just, they're so smart.
that's just solid wisdom right there. I mean, that is, so often I comment on I love the study of consciousness in general, and what our world could be like if we just began to intend to live that way. It would be unrecognizable for how it is in comparison to how it is right now. Just the intention of that would change the world for the better, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I hear behind that is that every single bee, and the template that I follow it for is, and every single human.
Yes.
There's a love that's acknowledged as a presence in each one of these beings. And how much of a better person I become when I look at my fellow human beings and see that, rather than seeing it as competition or where you've screwed up. If I see that God that already exists in that little being, whether it be a bee or a human or everything else.
Yeah, a concept we've been working with. Well, one of our core teachings is that our first principle is there's an omnipotence and omniscience. It's everywhere. It's everywhere present in everything and everyone, and then it's individualized in each person. Well, what I've noticed over the years, especially in the denomination I find myself, which is Unity, which is a part of New Thought, and there's such a focus on the individual that we often forget to bring in the collective into our imagining. It's like everybody wants to manifest, and I'm a big prosperity teacher, so I don't mind manifestation. I'm not scared of that. But when the collective is left out, it does create this kind of rigid individualism that is really not based in spirituality. It's based in consumerism. And it's one of the reasons I'm bringing this book, because it just kind of shatters that and brings it so into the heart chakra, so into the heart about this visioning and this imagining. Yes, it engages the personal and is for the personal, but ultimately it includes the collective. And one of the reasons we want to manifest is to be a blessing to the collective, not just because I want it. And so
that's a marvelous distinction. That's a marvelous distinction that you're making there. I love that.
Thank you. And I think your book teaches that. I think your book really teaches that. So I'm gonna really support, and I know the book is gonna really support our spiritual community as we work through that. And I don't know if you're well. I'm going to stop with that because I want to. I could talk to you for like pretty much all day, but at the very end of the book, and I kept being surprised as I read it. I was like, man, this thing just gets better as you go. Song of Unity was great. Song of Belonging. I mean, there's so much. But I want to end with, if you don't mind, talking a little bit about Song of Sharing, which is the section of the book at the end where it's helping us know how can we be good stewards, even if we don't have bees ourselves. How can we be good friends to the bees, and how can we create environments that support them and such as that? Will you talk a little bit about that?
There's some things that are on the very practical sense that are really a good idea.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to just simply help bees, you don't have to become a beekeeper.
Right.
But there are things you can do that make life for bees a little bit easier. For one, plant flowers.
Yeah.
That's obvious. And plant them with no chemicals. Get flower seed or flowers that have not had chemicals put on them, because those obviously are damaging to bees and all the insect world.
Yeah.
And therefore all the bird world and everybody else. So yes, clean. But also even some simple things like a bee goes from flower to flower to flower. So if you're planting 6 lavender plants and you're planting them all over the place, it's too far away for them. It's actually better to clump them together in spots.
Yeah.
And also to have a variety of flowers,
Yeah.
because I spread the flowers in our area over when we have the least amount of bloom. So I actually want to spread it from spring to fall. And in my area, we actually have the least amount of flowers in August, September. So I tend
True.
to focus my plantings on that.
Mm-hmm.
An easy thing to do if you're not a gardener is to just put out a watering station for bees. This is so fascinating. This is like my favorite thing. We have water stations set up all over the place. It can be as simple as a bird bath. Put it out, replenish the water every day, or put it in the shade where it won't dry up as fast. And put little places where a bee can stand on it and walk down. That way they won't drown. I found yesterday, it was raining. I was up in my bee yard here, and I found a little place where a bunch of water had collected in something, and there were a bunch of dead bees on the top of it. I felt so bad because I know better. Had I put a few sticks or some rocks or sand in it, then they could have stood on the side to get the water without falling in and drowning.
Well,
so something like that. One of the things about a water station is that it will welcome all insects. You'll have butterflies at it. You'll have moths. You'll have beetles will swing by, all different kinds of native bees that you've never seen before, ones that are neon green and yellow and black stripes. They'll all come in to have it. It's like the peaceful place where all of them who need water meet, and nobody attacks anybody else. It's known that we can't be attacking each other. We all have to have this water to survive together.
Water. Yeah. Well, we did that. We had just recently gotten a bird bath, and I said, "Oh, we gotta help the bees." I immediately put when I read that, immediately put stones in it, and then it's been really interesting. We have had more bees, and we have several. They're called acerola cherries around that. They were at the property when we got there, although they hadn't been taken care of and everything, and they have gorgeous blooms, and then my partner planted a bunch of stuff, and we have honeysuckle, and we did notice more bees, and I found myself just standing and watching them in the blooms, and how they will go in and practically get their head stuck. They go so far in the bloom. It's so beautiful. And then
you see them come out with little garland heads of pollen of different colors.
And then one of our employees at the church is raising, she's collecting all these caterpillars and having all these chrysalises chrysalis everywhere. And so she gave me a few chrysalis to take home. So now we've got those monarchs going crazy. So we have just in the last 6 months really increased the insect activity at our home just with a few little, very small, free changes. I mean, it didn't cost anything to put stones in our bird bath. It didn't cost anything to have a nicer environment and trim things up and all of that. So
I love that you're doing that. That is so important. And it seems like it's such a small thing, but every time that you do that and you increase the ability to support life in the area that you live, you keep the sound of that particular insect there. And I believe that just like bees have a buzzing sound, the whirring from their wings, every bit of that sound is a part of the harmony of the fabric that sound plays around us. When you do that on your little bit of land there, when you do that, what happens is that sound environment becomes richer. There's something in the sound, and we don't know this much as humans, but there's something in the sound that actually enriches the life for the trees and the plants.
Yes.
When you have gaps in the fabric, when someone is using chemicals and not thinking twice about spraying their roses, for example, not realizing that it kills a lot. There's a whole cascade of other things that die because of that. That sound, that particular little native pollinator, for example, is no longer there. That beetle is no longer there.
Yes, exactly.
That causes a weakness in the life force and the harmonic of all life.
Yes. And you go into that in the book too, the landscape of sound. Well, I hate to end this interview because I love your work and I know it's going to bless our community, and I hope we can talk again. Again, I'm so grateful for the book, A Song of Increase. I think it's a total gift to the universe, and bless those honeybees that are blessing you with their lives as well.
Jacqueline, if somebody wants to find out more information, where should they go online?
Oh, I have a website. Thank you for bringing that up. It's spiritbee.com. And you can see, as a matter of fact, there's a video on there that is so fun. It was a swarm of bees. I think there are probably 25,000 bees swarming around, and I'm walking in the midst of them. And I just want people to know that this is the true nature of bees, and actually most everything. Is the true nature is to be in harmony and ease and comfort around each other. And if you bring that to them, that's how they respond. Just the air is filled with love.
That is beautiful.
A quick little story. When I was a kid, I was had a next door neighbor who was a photographer and really cool guy, and he had a garden that had a lot of bees, and there was this one big, black bumblebee. You know those guys, right?
Oh yeah,
that was just terrifying because they look like big scary bees. And he told me, Dave, do not be afraid. This is a very friendly guy. And it was at that moment that my whole perspective on just insect life in general, other than spiders still freak me out, but and I think it's just the 8 legs. But this bee would just be, he always hung out at his garage, and I would go and the bee would just kind of float and look at me and, kind of buzz around. And as soon as I released the fear, as soon as I stopped like angsting around him, this one big giant bumblebee was very friendly and almost like would welcome me when I would go next door. It was such a cool thing.
You are so right about that. Science has found that bees actually have the ability to have facial recognition.
Oh, is that
that
right?
bee, when you went in and treated that bee with care and kindness and respect, that bee knows that person is of no danger to me. I can pick up the umbrella wasps, the ones they're underneath the eaves of your garage. People often think they're yellow jackets, which are ground dwellers,
right,
and they're not. I can pick them up on my finger because I walk by them every day. I say hello, and they look and they come out, and you see the way they look, like a little curiosity. And after a while, they get to go. Yeah, she does. She causes us no harm.
That's funny.
And I've taken him in my windows and put him on my finger and carried him outside.
Just this afternoon, driving in, I was pulling in, and one was just around my garage. And I was just like, you know what? This isn't something that I need to exterminate. This is just a fellow. Yes. It's just a little guy, probably going to name him or something. But I showed no fear. And ever since that moment as a teenager, I've just embraced it, and now bees don't swarm around me. I don't get accosted by wasps or anything.
Right.
But I think that's just because of my attitude shift towards them.
Exactly. Well, we know the power of intention, right? It's tremendous. Well, again, thank you, Jacqueline, for joining us.
My pleasure.
You always have a spiritual home and family here in Orlando, and we sure hope you look us up if you ever need support or a friend. We are here for you. We bless you on the journey, and thank you so much for your work and for being with us today.
Thank you. That just fills my heart to hear you say that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. And thank you, friends, for joining us. As always, we are so happy when you join us for the show, and especially when you share it, because we want as many people as possible to hear this message of unity, consciousness, of oneness, of how important it is to listen to our own intuition and then act when we hear from a very spiritual place. So bless you on the journey, and we thank you for joining us.
And of course, we will have links to the Song of Increase book, spiritbee.com, as well as information about Rudolf Steiner and biodynamic agriculture. Be sure to check out the show notes for episode 046. We'll see you next time.
All right, blessings, friends.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey, presented by CCU Orlando and Akins Counseling Center here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons, Dove Borland, Peter Gibson, Paul Caswell, and JJ Hamilton, along with our partner patrons, CCU Orlando and Akins Counseling Center. If you would like to help be a part of bringing shows like this and other programs to the channel, please consider becoming a patron. You can learn more about supporting the channel, along with show notes and information about our other programs at experienceofthesoul.com. And if you enjoyed this podcast, you can help spread the word by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, or the podcast platform of your choice. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2019, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.